Runners will tell you that there is almost nothing as gratifying as setting a running goal and achieving it. This kind of accomplishment builds mental health resilience, community, self-esteem, pride, physical health, including endurance, and very often lasting friendships. Races range from short practices to road races to half marathons to full 26-mile marathons, and one of the most famous, the Boston Marathon. Runners will also tell you that one of the most important aspects is always doing your personal best, which for most is not quitting, even when it gets tough. Sticking with it and seeing it through fundamentally embeds the belief that you can get through just about anything. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, a podcast featuring interviews with nonprofit and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. My hope is that you love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Feel free to pass along any valuable information you hear today to others, and remember to send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at reachus@theintrinsicgroup.com. Stride for Stride is a running club, not just any running club. Its mission is to create equity by purchasing entrance fees known as the bib for anyone who wants to run but can't afford the expensive fees to enter. In 2014, after Tom O'Keefe, this episode's guest, had the experience of running the Falmouth Road Race, his first, where he experienced that beautiful high from crossing the finish line, having successfully completed the race. For him, though, it wasn't just a race. It was the beginning of a way of life that he now wants to share with others, at least share that experience of success that he hopes everyone can experience. After the Falmouth race, in which he was sponsored, he wanted to join another race and realized that each race can have a hefty price tag, often over several $100s. Hence, in 2018, the birth of Stride for Stride, which gives immigrants, people of color, and those in low-income brackets the opportunity to join a race by purchasing a bib. Runners interested in becoming part of the Stride for Stride Club, meaning running numerous races throughout the year, can apply. During COVID-19, Tom recognized the need for running was second to the need for groceries for the population with whom he had already connected. So he began the program called Heart to Cart, buying groceries for those who need it most. I think I would describe Tom as a nonprofit social impact organizational entrepreneur. In fact, this podcast is actually a two-part series because Tom has another project brewing, a video production company called Impact Video Group with his friend and partner, Georgie Cruz, a social impact video production company that ideates, creates, and films social impact campaigns that have a positive impact on people, planet, and community. We're going to learn about that on the next podcast, so stay tuned as we interview Tom today for two of his other nonprofits. I am so very excited to introduce my guest today, Tom O'Keefe, who, by the way, is the founder of Boston Tweet. And I have to add this, in 2008, during the recession, Tom O'Keefe, not realizing that he is a nonprofit social impact entrepreneur, began Boston Tweet, an independent Twitter account that highlighted businesses and organizations in the Boston area that needed a boost to rejuvenate them and raise their visibility to keep them in business. So Tom has a history of seeing gaps and jumping in to close them and staying focused on making a difference in the lives of others. I am so very happy to introduce Tom O'Keefe to my listeners. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Laura. Well, the intro was terrific, actually. I should get that down and use that at some of our sites.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I usually start everything back from Boston Tweet because Boston Tweet was a way where I kind of really started looking outward instead of sort of, thinking only about myself. In 2008, the recession had started. It was fall 2008. Lehman Brothers had just crashed, and we were just entering a pretty scary time, especially for me. I had a couple internet startups at that time, and for working on my own, it was quite frightening, to be honest.
Yeah.
My fear was the restaurants and bars and various local shops in Boston would be hit really, really hard. Thankfully, that time they actually weren't. Unfortunately, in the past year, they have been. So Boston Tweet was founded just a way to create awareness for those local restaurants. And it was kind of looking back, only to get me through the holidays, that was November or so, and to kind of get me to January in hopes of actually getting a real job. But by the time that January came, it became actually quite popular, and especially at that time, racked up a few thousand followers. And back in early '09, that was quite unique. And it became a platform of just promoting everything Boston. And 13 years later, it's still a powerful voice, and it's introduced me to a lot of different people and organizations and people in Boston and charities. And it's sort of what introduced me to charities, because it's allowed me to give charities a voice to a large population in Boston. And so that's sort of how Stride for Stride came about. Heart to Cart, a couple earlier endeavors, Download Boston, which was promoting local startups, and Flutter, which was a crowdsourcing campaign for charities. It all started with Twitter. And I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter at times, but I do get a lot of credit for really focusing me on hyper-local and doing good.
For sure, doing good. It's really amazing, because as a platform that really both helped you personally, but really you looked outward so much. I mentioned in the introduction, I'm not an athlete per se, but I do play a sport, and I know that high or that feeling. So this Stride for Stride really came about because of your interest based on the Falmouth Road Race.
Yeah, Falmouth is an incredible summer classic that started in 1973, so it's been around quite a long time. It's a unique race. It's actually 7.1 miles. It's basically started as 4 or 5 guys running from a bar in Woods Hole to a bar in Falmouth Heights, Falmouth, and that's why it's a kind of an odd number distance. But it was the first race I ever participated. Before then, I ran as a form of exercise, but I never had a purpose to the running. And it was always sort of a chore, sort of like begrudgingly going to the gym when I didn't want to. And that's what it was. It wasn't until Falmouth did my running have a purpose. And I saw the adrenaline of running a race with 12,000 runners, as Falmouth does, thousands of spectators. It's really the second best race in Massachusetts, in my opinion. And from there, I was hooked. I was gifted that bib by New Balance, who I've worked with for a number of years. And without that bib, I may have never jumped into a race before. And I remember at the time, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I ran the race. I actually did phenomenal in the race. It just totally changed my life. And from there, I became kind of this obsessive, maybe a tad bit annoying runner. Then from there, I started running on races, and then quickly realized that not every race is free. Boston Marathon, for a qualifier, is $250. If you're a charity runner, it's $350. So obviously that's excluding a lot of people that are good runners but can't afford to pay that bib. And then that started the percolation of Stride for Stride, which came about a few years after that.
So talk a bit about Stride for Stride. So I know that you have a team, but you also sponsor individual runners for specific races, or how does it work?
We have 42 runners on our team. All but 2 of those runners are immigrants from Central America, every country in Central America, Venezuela and Brazil, Chile, actually also Cuba, even Nigeria, Jamaica. And we sponsor them for any race they want to run. We try to have a few races where all of us run together. This upcoming June, we have a race up in the North Shore of Boston. 20 of us are running together and sort of have that community aspect to it. But we also have runners in New Jersey. At least at this time, we have groupings in New Jersey, Jersey City, Los Angeles. Out by you, we actually have a couple of runners. And we have a great team of Nicaraguan runners in Miami, Florida. Most of the runners on our team are pretty avid runners. They're all quite good. They just haven't been able to afford to compete on their own.
So how did the groups emerge in different locations? So even though you're Boston centric in terms of where you're housed, you've got these arms in different places to provide support, which is great.
Yeah, it's actually been very interesting. I started Stride for Stride November 18, and then basically, at least in the Northeast, by the first week of December, the running season kind of ends up here. So probably not the best time to start. Our next big race isn't until, or at least up here, Super Sunday, which is like early February, Super Bowl Sunday. So for the first 2 months, we actually didn't have any runners. And I was like, okay, you start to doubt yourself. You put things out there. And after the first week is always great. Weeks after that, no one's sort of coming by anymore. And our first runner, we sponsored a guy named Ned, who was actually from Back on My Feet, which is a terrific organization that helps people transition out of homelessness by committing to running 3 days a week usually at 6 a.m., which personally I can't do. Ned is a terrific runner. He was our first guy that we signed up for that Super Sunday. Ned is actually still with us. He's a 3:30 marathoner. He's probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Ned is originally from Chile. And so at that race, I started to realize, okay, that we might have something here. There's a need for it. There are really good runners out there, people of color, immigrants who are really good runners, but can't afford to compete. Because previous to that lineup at the race, everyone sort of looks like me. Races are pretty evenly split, male, female, but there's not a ton of diversity. And a half marathon, it's $80 to $100 or so. So it's really expensive. But Ned changed my thinking. Our second runner was a guy named Estrado from Guatemala. He lives here in Boston. He's like Abraham, where everyone is a descendant from Abraham, and everyone's a descendant from Estrado. And if you actually go to our site, there's a guy talking about his dream of running the Boston Marathon. That's Estrado. You can't help but love Estrado. He's just an amazing guy and just such a genuine guy. But everyone has come from him. He started inviting his friends, Jess and Doug, who are also from Guatemala. They had other friends from their home country. They brought in a couple other immigrants from the Boston area, from Nicaragua. And then the Nicaraguans that are up here in Boston ran people in a running group in Nicaragua who now live in Miami. That's how we spread to Leo and Marcos and Kellen. Kellen's terrific female runner down in Miami. So it spread from people they knew in their hometown before they moved to the United States. And that's how it's been able to spread to Miami and Jersey and California. I intend to go down there and run the Miami Marathon, or at least the half marathon, and sort of meet them. But I've communicated with them so much over the last few years that I've really grown to like them and know them. And Kellen is one of our great runners from Miami. She used to train in Nicaragua with a running organization called Jay Portillo Running. Jay Portillo was the head coach there. That organization we sponsor now too in Nicaragua. We sponsor them with clothing and shoes. And most importantly, actually, is vitamins. Something we don't really think of here in the States, but if you're a distance endurance runner in a country like Nicaragua, where you're not getting all those vitamins in your food, your basic Centrum vitamins are essential. And all our gear is actually from Nicaragua too. A connection from Kellen. So it's all members of our team really just helping to spread the word and to their friends.
And they're all under the label of Stride for Stride.
They all run in, or at least races that we sponsor. We don't require them to run every single day in our gear. But if we sponsor from the races, they all run in our gear. And our logo is an equality sign. It's just an equal sign. And our newest gear now is just a red equal sign on a black shirt. When I created a logo back in early or mid 2018, the thought was not to create a typical running logo, but to create something that stood out at races. So you can immediately see that and say, oh, that's Stride for Stride, or at least that's unique and that's different.
I love that you did that because, as I said in the intro, you're not a typical running club. You're really an equity club, right? And so the symbol of equity is really the foremost, just running as a mechanism or a platform by which you're really striving to have inclusion and equity within the sport of running.
Yeah, we're not really a running club. So we're not trying to compete with other running clubs. At least in Boston here, there's Pioneers, which is a great running club in Dorchester, Unnamed Run Club. The Heartbreakers is a huge club here in Boston. We're not looking to compete with them by setting up a Saturday run. We're looking to support them, especially Pioneers. Pioneers is Dorchester, a lot of people of color on their team. And, we're happy to support them by any race bid for them. We're not looking to push them out because they do an amazing job. We're just an equity team that, we'll support any club. We've reached out to many. There's some really great Black running organizations in Baltimore. Black Men Run, Girls Run, that we're happy to support anyone that wants to run a race.
You really lead with equity and inclusion.
Yeah, our goal is to make races more diverse, more inclusive. And the way of doing that, if you have a financial barrier, it's buying your race bib. So our guy, Cleveland, who's from Jamaica, he never ran a race until 2 years ago, the fall of 19. And it was the first race he ever ran. And he came in third place. He actually sort of lost it on the hills a little bit, but he runs about a 6-minute mile. So an incredible runner. And with a few races under his belt, once he kind of trains to pace himself a little better, he'll be winning races. But this is a guy that, couldn't afford to run a race before then. And now can easily win a race. Our whole theory is once you're at the starting line, everyone is exact same. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or if you're making minimum wage. As long as you get to the starting line, you have an equal chance of winning that race. And Stride for Stride's goal is to make sure you get to the starting line. Getting to the finish line, crossing the finish line, like in your intro, it changes your mental health. It changes your optimism. And if you can accomplish a race, a half marathon, a Boston Marathon, then you can accomplish everything. Everything after that becomes, maybe a little more easier and manageable. We support that in running, but that's, the same thing in life too. If everyone can have an equal chance of starting from home plate, starting from the starting line, and not starting from second or third base.
Yeah, I love that. I love the philosophy behind it. I noticed on your website that you do have gear. You have gear that you sell that helps support Stride for Stride. Talk a little bit about that. I know you talked a little bit about the logo, but anyone can purchase it as a way to support your organization, right?
Yeah, we provide all our runners with the gear for free, and shoes,
Right.
and our shirts for free. But anyone can buy. We have singlets, we have sleeveless shirts, short sleeve shirts, various. Our logo is actually in a bunch of different styles that we have on our website, but you can purchase it. Most of our running shirts are $35, and we're all for not just our team wearing it, but for those who support our mission. After the cost of a shirt, and cost of a shirt's roughly $15. All that money goes to supporting our mission. We have a Run and Stride Day that happened last May, and it's just basically getting as many people out there running throughout Boston or even the country, and just in our gear, and just it just builds some awareness and recognition of our logo, and so that was a great success.
So talk a little bit about COVID, because it did sort of put a gap between 2019 and now 2021. So what did you do during that time, and how did runners support themselves in terms of their own athletic ability and to stay connected?
Yeah, COVID was tough. I mean, March, early April of COVID, I was like, okay, we're a running organization that sponsors people to run road races, but we can't run races anymore. So what do? Virtual races then started coming around. We've actually had some really good success with virtual races last year, either buying our team a virtual Bay State Marathon or something, or us being a part of virtual races like Social Distance Dash, which supported us, and Falmouth Road Race actually too. So it actually was still an active year for our runners. A lot of our teams, and we just had Calaman ran a half marathon every day in the month of February, just in a few months ago. And he ran a marathon every weekend in the month of March, which is pretty insane.
Yeah.
But Calaman's amazing. It's what started out thinking was going to be a dire year for us did turn out to be actually a positive. We're starting to hit our stride, if I can be tacky and say that. So, we're excited for finally getting out there and getting out to real races where, our logo is built and our shirts are built for running in groups and really making an impression on people. And, we'll have that in the next few months, which is very exciting.
It's really exciting, and it really sounds like you're about to explode potentially in that way. And I love the fact that you are not in competition with other running clubs that serve specific populations and want to help them grow and be partners with them. So I love the whole idea of supporting diversity and inclusion, which is really what your mantra is.
Any runner that's a part of any run club, we will sponsor you for a race if you fall into sort of an immigrant or a person of color or a low-income runner and can't afford to run. We will sponsor you.
Yeah.
We don't care what running group you're a part of, or even what town or city you live in.
So shift a little bit, because during the time of COVID, you saw a need in terms of people just purchasing groceries, and your Heart to Cart was born. So talk a little bit about that, because that's part of Stride for Stride in a way. It's sounds like a bit of a left turn, but all part of that same idea of equity and support, and really working with populations who are in unfortunate circumstances.
At the time, it kind of maybe felt like a left turn, but then now looking back, it really all made sense. So, back in early March and April, when we weren't running and running wasn't on top of mind for a lot of people, including our runners, what was worrying to them was being able to eat, being able to afford groceries. And so, that was trickling throughout my mind. Then I saw a program Tyler Perry had purchased everyone groceries in Atlanta, I think at a Walmart there. And so putting those two together, I was like, Stride for Stride could do that. I can set that up in a day. It really took a day to get going. And the basic concept was buy supermarket gift cards for people who can't afford to eat. We started by asking our team who was struggling, anyone on the team was struggling. Thankfully, only about half a dozen or so needed support and cards, which we've been given cards to throughout the year. But then from them, it's which friends of yours need help. Then it branched out to larger communities. So Heart to Cart since last year has purchased $52,000 in supermarket gift cards. Most of those cards have been distributed in the Boston towns of Chelsea, Mass., East Boston, which is Boston, and Revere and Lynn, Massachusetts. All towns just actually north of the city, all heavily immigrant communities, and all that really, really suffered during the pandemic. Chelsea, 21% of the population had COVID. I think it was 60% were out of work. 80% of the population are service workers, working in restaurants and hotels. So most of our cards, we did a lot over last year in Chelsea, and a few of our runners are from Chelsea. So that was the introduction. But then working with the Chelsea Collaborative, which is an amazing lifeline to the people in Chelsea. It's now a food bank. It's actually been, for me, a wonderful experience of really getting to know the people of Chelsea, doing what I can to help a small amount of people there. And, Heart to Cart is now its own entity. It's a part of Stride for Stride, but easily could be its own charity. And maybe at some point it will be.
Do you see that continuing? Because obviously the need isn't going away, even as things start to open up, because there's been so much suffering.
Yeah, the inequality, the gap between those who have and those who have not has expanded even more so, if that's even possible, over the last year. You alluded to my Impact Video Group. We did an interview a couple of weeks ago with some members of Chelsea. And what really struck me in the interview was she said the problems in Chelsea have only just begun. And this is after a brutal, brutal year for the people of Chelsea. Their problems are not going away. It's going to take years and years. It's inequity that was around for years before the pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated that. So yes, our support for them will continue. In January, I handed out $7,000 worth of supermarket gift cards, which sounds like a lot of money. And it is a lot of money, and that's $7,100 gift cards. It took me less than 5 minutes to hand out those cards to 70 individual people. And there was another 200 people in line. They were in line waiting at the food bank. And when you realize, and it's actually really challenging, you walk away saying, okay, I helped 70 people, but I couldn't help 200 more people. And you actually sort of feel pretty crappy after that because you can't help more. So at least in this town, there's such a massive, massive demand. And I think there's a similar town like Chelsea in every city, metro city area throughout this country and throughout the world too. The challenging thing, which I think is going to be when things go back to normal and everyone thinks that we're all back, everything's good, there's no more problems, it's probably going to be much more challenging to fundraise and raise those money. Last year was an incredible year for fundraising. People knew all the problem and equity that was going on. So it was, I don't want to say easy, but we were able to raise a lot of money for Heart to Cart and build those gift cards. I think when people get back to normal, it's going to be a lot harder to do so, to convince them that there are people that are still suffering out there.
You raised such a good point, and you have such a following that you can tap into, and people really stepped up. And maybe, the other thing is that you really have to make the case that things, yes, will go back, but I don't know that they'll ever go back to normal. As you point out, I think it's going to be worse before it ever gets a little more equalized. I think our whole work life has changed. I think school life has changed. I think there are a lot of things that people have to adjust to. And for folks who've been laid off, lost their job, recouping is going to take a lot longer. There's going to be different industries that hopefully open up. It does sound like Heart to Cart will be a mainstay. And as you pointed out, I think you can be a role model for other communities who could start the same thing and maybe build a relationship with the local supermarket to help finesse that and make it run more smoothly. Or maybe at that point in time, places like a Market Basket can help with the fundraising aspect of it.
That would be amazing. I've never spent more money in my entire life than I have in the last year at Market Basket and a couple other supermarkets. The need will be there for quite a while. That is for sure.
I mean, they really did the best out of anyone during this pandemic. So I'm hoping that supermarkets recognize what you're doing and will be able to continue what you've started in a way of more of a partnership rather than a consumer relationship.
Yeah, even if it's just a little discount. But, the beautiful thing about Heart to Cart is so basic. It is so easy to do. mostly everyone can put something on Facebook or whatever social account you have and say, I'm raising $500 to buy 5 gift cards for someone in my community that needs help. I am all for it. Sort of like open source giving. Steal the idea and just run with it in your town, create whatever name you want for it. It's buying supermarket gift cards. It's an easy thing to do, and distributing it out to whoever needs it. And almost every town has a food bank or health center that serves the poor and underprivileged. And so it's a very simple concept that I wish more people would do. So my premise is I'm only one person, can only do so much. But the beauty is we all can help someone. So, I can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone.
Well said. And so I want to dedicate this podcast to all the folks listening who are going to start a heart to cart in their neighborhood, right? Wouldn't that be amazing? If we could get everyone to do that,
yeah,
it would be great. And I want to put a shout out to all grocery stores who have done really remarkably well during this pandemic, given what's occurred. And, they should be part of that partnership, whatever that looks like.
I'll stay quiet on that one, but I don't disagree.
So you really have throughout your career been really a nonprofit social impact entrepreneur. You really have started things with a bigger picture in mind of wanting folks to either feel the way you did after a race, to help support local organizations, bars, restaurants, and then really seeing a gap in people not being able to literally sustain themselves with food, and figuring this is what you can do. That's your new title for me. How do you feel about that?
No, I appreciate it. No, I love the title. It's taken a while to get there. And, and maybe it started by accident, by starting Boston Tweet. And then instead of looking inward, looking outward and how I can help people around me. And just with a tweet, a tweet can raise a lot of money for, a local charity. And when I started Heart to Cart last year, I was sort of done with Twitter. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put this out there, see how it goes. And I raised, in the first week, $10,000 or so. And I was like, okay, I actually like Twitter again. It's sort of like this long-term relationship I've had. Sometimes there's highs and lows. We're starting from 2008. I've had a lot of years before that. I've had a lot of internet companies before that. And most of them were really, really bad failures. But you learn from the failures. You learn what not to do, I think, more than anything. Some of that learning was stay focused, at least in my opinion, kind of stay hyper local. Stride for Stride's not local, but everything else I've done is local. The Impact Video Group, that we really wanted to highlight things that, local news is not highlighting, and people are doing good. There's so many good stories out there, and there's so many people that need attention that maybe aren't good stories, but that are tough stories, like Chelsea struggling, housing crisis, eviction, stuff like that. So
the concept of looking outside, that you can have the internal strength to get something started, but it really comes from looking outside and seeing what's really needed, and to move from that egocentric spot into this collective, we're a community. And when we help one another, we actually not only do good and it feels good, it's probably like the running high a little bit, but it's
sure,
right,
sure.
Don't you think? But also that we are building a community that is sustainable versus the individualistic, I'm going to only sustain myself. And I absolutely can't tell you enough how your example throughout all of these years is an example to others, that you just got to put yourself out there by looking outward and seeing, what can I do? What difference can I make? And lo and behold, you can make a huge difference. And you have.
Yeah, every single one of us can. And I think a lot of people are definitely going more that trend of it's social enterprise, social impact, and how can I help others, as opposed to, just all about me. I think a lot of people get worried about starting, or at least distracted or intimidated by starting something because problems are so big. Climate change or poverty or homelessness are so big, and they can't tackle that whole problem. And that's true. You can't solve world hunger, one person, but you can solve it with one person in your area, in your community, or 2 people or 3 people. And that makes a world of a difference to that one person. Don't look at it as a national thing or world thing. Look at it as just your neighborhood, your street. if you can help some people on your street, and then maybe when you get comfortable doing that, expand to your neighborhood or your town. And then, then you take these baby steps of just whether it's gift cards or whatever it might be to help them and just make a difference in those lives. And you don't have to save every life, but if you change 5 or 6 lives, that's massive. You change one life, it's massive. If you change one life and make a positive impact on one person, then it's worthwhile.
We almost get paralyzed by the problems that do seem so huge. And yet I think that if we make one, as you pointed out, one change, we're one impact. And that's really was the premise of Small and Gutsy, right? Just really one organization at a time. And we have a lot of organizations to get to. And sometimes you just have to, as you said, put it out there and see.
Yeah, you just put it out there. There's so many platforms. If you need a website, Wix or Squarespace, one page, splash page, put it out there, put it on your Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and see the response, and then let those individuals sort of mold it for you. You're not going to solve every question the first day. The tech world, it's MVP, a minimally viable product. You put that out there, and that works for charity entrepreneurs, and put it out there and just start. It's really, with all the technology out there, it's really easy to do these days, for sure.
That's such a great point. And I want to go back to the early sort of comment about it's just getting to the starting line. And not to get discouraged. If it's something that it resonates with folks, it's going to make a difference. So, and you never know to whom necessarily, right?
And it takes time. You put something out there, the first day or two is going to be pretty good. And then you got this lull period, which gets really scary. But you got to believe it. You got to be passionate about the idea and believe in yourself and help make a difference.
Same concept with running. There are going to be those hills, and there's going to be the valleys, and there's going to be the things that are easy and tough. They're all hills. I love it. Maybe that's why I'm not a runner. Small and Gutsy is sponsored by the Intrinsic Group, my boutique management consulting firm specializing in guiding organizations to leverage talent, optimize processes, and to ensure the organization's narrative is aligned with their culture. We'd love to invite you to be a sponsor. So if you're interested in sponsoring Small and Gutsy to keep it going, please reach out to me at reachus@theintrinsicgroup.com. So as you may know, at the end of our podcast, we always do a quick round of quick Gutsy questions. They're supposed to be quick, but they don't have to be too quick. We leave it up to our guests. So are you ready for our quick Gutsy round?
Yes, I'm never that quick in responding, so I'll try to be more brief.
No, I actually really appreciate that, Tom, because we have gotten some of the best, pearls and bits of wisdom through some lengthy responses. So we say it's quick and gutsy, but it's really okay if it's not. So what is at the top of your wish list? However, the answer can't be money or funding. So for either, you can say for Stride, it's this. For Heart to Cart, it's this.
Well, everything kind of costs money, but for Stride, it's to get my team running the Boston Marathon. Everyone's dream on our team is to run a Boston Marathon. Even the guys and girls that live in Miami, they all want to come up to Boston. And Boston, unfortunately, is a really, really tough race to get into. You either have to be really fast or have enough money to charity fundraise. So because of the pandemic, we weren't eligible for race bibs this year because everything was put on hold. So, we have a couple guys running because they're fast enough, but there's others. Boston Marathon will change your life. When you're running it, it's an amazing experience, people cheering on. When you finish, you're going to feel like someone just beat you at a bat, but it's everyone's dream.
Having lived in Boston for a very long time and a transplant to LA, and Pavel's the same, he grew up in Boston. My brother, who lives in St. Louis, Missouri, came and ran the Boston Marathon and was on the sidelines cheering. So it's a huge community piece that you mentioned about Falmouth is true for so many marathons, and, really true for Boston. It brings the community together as one. And so bringing diversity to the race and to have it more charitable in the way that it's affordable for others is really important too. So I love that you're doing that.
Running races, Boston Marathon, you're running the same race with the best runners in the world, the professionals, the elites. There's no other sport where you do that. You're not playing on a football field with Tom Brady. You're not playing, with Big Papi, Fenway Red Sox. He's retired. So, but obviously those are Boston-focused examples. But there's no other race where you're running with the best. So you're competing. You feel the thing that kind of blew me away about running, especially the Boston Marathon, is people cheer for you like like you're Meb, like you're Shalane Flanagan, like you're the best runner in the world. And and I think the first time I ran the marathon, I was like, okay, are you putting me on? Are you really cheering for me? And then it took me, I'm a slow learner. It probably took me 2 or 3 marathons to realize, no, this is really legit. People are really cheering you on. And I think that's pedestal that I would love to put our team on, to just have them for that day. And it's actually not just a day, but everyone cheering for you on that day. And actually after that, you're a Boston Marathon finisher, and people will always sort of give you props and respect you for finishing the Boston Marathon. Something I want to, that thrill to give my team.
It's really, it's so beautiful. A friend of mine who has been surviving cancer for many years, was a marathon runner, ran the Boston, decided to run at the very end when she was, struggling. And we all wore T-shirts to support her. I mean, it's just a community that does that. And it's a beautiful thing to be part of. And yeah, you can believe it. You cheer for folks, especially me who's on the sidelines. I'm in awe of people who can do it. And I'm just lucky I can do the walk for hunger that was in Boston. That's a walk.
Yeah. Well, that's 26 miles too, though.
And I was sore. And it was many years ago. Now tell me, Heart for Cart, what is your wish outside of funding? Because I know resources and funding is important to every nonprofit.
Wow, that's a really tough question. Heart to Cart is so simple that it actually hasn't changed from the first day we created it, where Stride has evolved. It has to do with money. We have 650 people on our waiting list waiting for a gift card. Most of them, all of them are in their towns I mentioned earlier. I certainly would love to be able to clear that Excel spreadsheet to zero. That's $65,000 to spend. So I don't know if we will get there. So can that be my wish for Heart to Cart?
I think it's okay because it's reducing it is based on funding, but it's reducing the list that you have. And maybe my wish for that is that every other community that needs it will start one. And then I have another wish for it, is that the grocery stores where you purchase the gift cards will give them to you at half price. How about that?
People are going to think I'm paying you to be my publicist. So,
but I'm very serious because they've done really well, and it's a nonprofit and it's a write-off for them. And what a great sponsorship opportunity for them to say, we sponsor this.
I think I mentioned you previously, Stop and Shop donated, I think, a handful of cards. They were the only ones I requested from other stores, even just a 10% discount. So if I'm spending $50,000, a 10% discount of $5,000, that's a good chunk of change that, we can use to buy more gift cards or use to support our runners and Strive for Stride. And so I appreciate your pushing that agenda for me.
If you were to think of a song, you said you liked music. If you were to think of a song that describes Stride for Stride and Heart to Cart, what would they be?
The Heart to Cart sort of go there. As we were talking earlier, I'm a fanatical U2 fan. I've seen U2 42 times. There's a great lyric in the song 13 is, "Are you tough enough to be kind?" Which is really, I think, a really powerful lyric, because I think a lot of people really are kind of intimidated to be kind, or especially if you're younger, you might get made fun of for doing this. And "Are you tough enough to be kind?" I think is it's a song kind of giving life advice to his younger children. And, I think Heart to Cart really is all about kindness. And whether it's someone that creates the program to distribute the cards, or the donors, like without the donors, we would never be able to do any of this, or, at least not 50,000. For Strive for Stride, a song that goes for Strive for Stride. When running it, I don't want to just focus on U2, but Streets Have No Name is a song that just gets me fired up to run really fast. I was part of the Heartbreakers running community before the pandemic, and we always started our track workouts with Thunderstruck by AC/DC, which is such a great song.
That's a great one. It's also just the kind of motivation you want, right? When you first kind of getting going. So it's great. What makes the organization, or both aspects of the organization, gutsy?
Well, I think Strive for Stride is a little bit more gutsy because we're trying to shake up races. We're trying to just mix it up a little bit, make it not so damn white, and that, sometimes might get pushback on that. I mean, I think every race director is certainly for that. And I think areas, most of the races that we sponsor are all for increasing diversity. But, I think that's shaking things up a little bit. And, I think everyone can appreciate helping someone that can't afford to eat. There's nothing more, I know what it's like to not be able to pay rent. And I know how crippling that is on not being able to do anything else. Can't think of anything else. I've never been struggling to pay for food. And I can't imagine that's a whole nother level, especially during the last administration and really fighting for immigrants, really just supporting them and just saying, you deserve to be here. This country would be nothing without you. City of Boston, would never be able to run without the immigrants from Chelsea and the North Shore of Massachusetts. And that's true for any city, but I'm familiar with Boston the most, saying that you're important and I want you to accomplish the same goals as I can. At least in Massachusetts, there was a lot of animosity towards the last administration. So I think it was easy here, but in other areas, it might not have been so easy to be that maybe one voice to stand up for immigrants and people not from here. So we're all not from here at some point.
So what is something that outsiders or maybe even a few insiders don't know about Stride for Stride, Heart to Cart? And you can answer for both or collectively.
And we're not looking to compete. That's certainly sort of a PR branding point that I keep putting out there. That's, we're not looking to compete against your club. And we'll support any club that, kind of fits into our mission and support your runners. And, it's not like you have to wear clothing at all times if you're running with pioneers. It's just, we're happy to support anyone to, one, increase diversity, inclusion, and races. So whatever that might be. That's probably the messaging that we really have to keep pushing forward, because I think people know that, we buy race bibs and everything that sort of starts as a running club. We run on Tuesdays and Thursdays from Tavern Bar downtown. And, we're totally different. And we only exist really on race days for the most part, or at least together as a group. We all come together on Sundays to run a race. And we don't really run in groups that often. One, because we're kind of all around the city, but also, our runners work all different hours. Some will work in restaurants, others work all day, painting houses, some work in hotels. So there's no 9 to 5 sort of thing where I'm out and can run at 6 o'clock. And most run groups are 6 o'clock or pre-work. So thankfully, most of the team is available on Sundays when most races are held. I try to make it as transparent as possible and put everything out there. I mean, Stride for Stride is just me, and Heart to Cart is too. So that might not be known.
But I really appreciate you talking about people's work schedules, because I don't know what assumptions folks make about when people can run together, right? And so you have people not working typical 9 to 5 jobs. And, so I think that's a really good point. And last quick gutsy question. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to talk about or endorse Stride for Stride and then Heart to Cart, who would they be?
Stride for Stride is definitely a runner. Some Boston Marathon legend like Des Linden, who won a few years ago, Shalane Flanagan's huge, Meb Kaliflinsky. I always have trouble with his last name. But Stride for Stride is so running focused that it really needs to come from one of them. Our dream publication is Runner's World, which is sort of like the Bible for runners. And that actually, I know from other running groups, has changed the whole trajectory of their organization, nonprofit running groups that are here in Boston. So, that's our dream. Heart to Cart, honestly, a lot of the influence came from Tyler Perry. He's a man that I deeply respect. I think he's a kind individual, has done amazing success from starting from nothing, and but also has given back tremendously over the years. And he could put me in a movie while he's at it too. So.
Right. Why not? And then we'll do a shout out to Bono too, just because that one lyric, right? It's great. How can people reach you? What is the best way to reach both organizations?
Well, strideforstride.com is our Stride for Stride website, obviously, and hearttocart.org is Heart to Cart. There's contact forms on there. I can give my Tom at strideforstride.com. Will go directly to me. Anyone has a question, regarding buying a shirt or donating or whatever it may be, you can directly email from there. Stride for Stride's on Instagram and Twitter, and Boston Tweet is on Twitter too. There's a lot.
I just want to take a moment and thank you, Tom, for sharing so much of your entrepreneurial spirit in the social impact sector. Boston Tweed even being part of that as a for-profit, just the concept of getting out there and doing and being part of the community, not being a bystander and not being an observer and not individually just taking care of yourself, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. I mean, you're giving a voice to, it's kind of similar to Boston Tweet to give a voice to charities that, don't have that. And, it's really important. And, even if it converts one person, two people, or learn about Stride for Stride, it's totally worth it. So totally appreciate your time and, everyone's time for partaking. So.
Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars and write a review on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts, or buy us a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/small and gutsy. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, my co-producer, sound engineer, and composer, the amazing Pavel Franson, my exceptionally talented graphic designer, Nate Addy, my social work intern extraordinaire, Stephanie Tran. Please check out their bios on the Intrinsic website, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. Our blog of these small and gutsy nonprofits and social impact organizations can be found in the organizational stories section of the Intrinsic Group website, so that we can continue to link clients, volunteers, future employees, investors, and donors to this small but mighty network. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. We just want you to learn about the small and gutsy nonprofit and social impact organizational sector so they can spread their story and their impactful work. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Witkoff, and thanks for listening.